let's call the meeting to order. Is there changes to the agenda? No, good. Okay. And minutes for the last meeting? You've all had a chance to look those over. Are there any additions or corrections to those?
Make a motion to pass the minutes, approve the minutes. Second.
Okay. Minutes have been approved and seconded. Let's move on to unfinished business.
Want to vote on that?
Oh, no, I'm a dictator, no voting.
No voting?
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Okay. And I think we'll probably go over, or past that, discuss the full ordinance, because wasn't that something Stacy had brought up about
Yes.
talking about
Yes.
that? So let's just kind of put that on hold. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. And we're gonna discuss nominees to fill the board vacancy. Have you guys talked to anybody or thought about anybody for that?
I've got 2 volunteers I'm bringing tonight. Anyone else?
You are? Okay. Is, remember our winner of the property contest, is she one of them? Because she was kind of interested.
Susan Bash is one of them.
Okay.
And Brent Dre is number 2.
Brent Dre?
Yeah. He's not available till December when he gets out of college.
Is he going to be living inside?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't check. I'm sorry, I didn't double check with him. I don't know if he's going to be living in city limits. I think he is.
That's what you have to know.
Yeah, you have to be a
Kind
resident.
of sounds like that would be a qualification.
It just didn't occur to me to ask. I think of him as a Sac City person. Oversight. Sorry, I'll double check.
Okay, anybody else have anybody to talk to, or? Gary Conger done this before? He was on city council, right? Or
He was
Gary
on city
Conger?
council for 2 years,
But he
yes.
wasn't ever on P and Z?
No, he was not.
He was a city administrator for a while.
In DeWitt, yeah.
In DeWitt.
I kind of was thinking of him, but then I don't know if he'd want to do anything like that either. But no, that'd be, because we had to fill, oh my God, remind us about that, Vicky's place, and then, like I said, I think Bobby was gonna be stepping down.
Well, we have pretty good attendance and participation. We can probably, take a month or whatever to make sure we get all the candidates that we can.
Because then after we get them all situated or figured out, then they go to the city council and you guys.
Yeah, ideally, we'd get a recommendation from you that would then be presented to the council for approval.
Okay. Had anybody talked to, and I can't remember names, the chiropractor's wife that
Kristen.
came to our that one meeting?
I think Doctor.
I've talked to him.
I just, she came to that meeting that we were supposed to have what time at the rec center, and she showed up, but Curtis thought she had different reasons for showing up.
Oh yeah, for sure. She wanted
Yeah,
to.
because of that
totally.
property.
But she's on like everything all the time.
Oh, is she really?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know if she would,
She might think something else is less important than this and want to be on.
yeah. So maybe her, I don't know.
But I don't know.
Oh,
Are you gonna go talk to her?
Is she in the phone book? I don't know. how to
I'll
get
visit
hold
with
of
her if you want me to, I know her.
You, yeah? You
Yeah.
want to ask her?
I'll visit with her.
Okay. Okay. All right, any other ideas or thoughts on that? I guess you could think of some more. Okay. That's so hard to get people volunteer to do things. Do we want to move on then?
I had something for Stacy for the next topic if you're moving on. Just.
Oh, about the property
Mhm.
court cases? Yeah, I think Adam was gonna talk to us about some of that, don't you?
Yeah, and I actually have a little bit of an update from Stacy because he did call me this afternoon and left me a message on my phone when he said he wouldn't be here. I don't know, I haven't seen the email yet, I just know that there was one that came. He said he had about 2 permits he was working on. He said one question he was dealing with, and he actually asked me in the voice message, and I'll have to look it up, I don't know the answer. And that is that if a commercial building wants to expand up, are they required to get a permit? And I couldn't answer that question without reviewing, because it's been practiced in the past, since, all the way back to Terry, that they usually bounce it off me and we look at it together, and if we can't come up with some kind of answer together, we'll get Colin involved and ask his opinion on it. But I don't think it's changing the footprint, so I don't think they have to, but it is changing one of the dynamics of size, which could put it out of compliance. So I don't know, well, I was going to talk with him tomorrow about it and see if we couldn't come to some kind of conclusion on that. The other thing he shared with me was that he had that he would be presenting to us at the office a list that he planned on taking some action against. I apologize.
Corners, dangerous corners.
Yes, that's what it was, dangerous corners.
There's 6 of them on here.
And that he wanted to make you aware that he'd be notifying us and asking us to take action on them. Unless you guys had some questions or if, I don't know how soon he was planning to do it, but it was tomorrow, whether it was.
Is there a packet that I don't have that has those corners on it?
Is there-
It came in the email.
There's an email that.
You want a copy of it? Oops. You can have my copy when we're done, because I still have it on my computer.
As far as the process goes, there's 2 things
I'll
that.
take this back then.
There's 2 discussions I've had with Stacy. One is him and I called over to Early because I guess there was an interest in communicating with Early and finding out what kind of, if Early was doing something different in their process than we were. After talking with Early over there, it's not comparing apples to apples. For one thing, they don't have a zoning board, so there is no autonomous board that actually serves to fill that function in Early. However, what she said, there was no real magic to what they were doing. What they were basically doing was negotiating with property owners. They weren't obtaining the properties. And I guess there was some kind of misunderstanding that people thought they were actually obtaining the properties. They were not obtaining the properties. They were negotiating with the property owners to get things cleaned up. And that if that failed, they were then activating the city to abate it if it's something that could be abated that way. If not, then they were proceeding to court process on those properties. So there was nothing really different from what they were doing, and primarily how our system's set up to operate. And that's kind of one of the things I was going to talk about a little bit tonight. Is I think there's a little bit of after speaking with Curtis, I thought there was a little bit of lack of clarity on how the process flows. The way we've always kind of done it is that the zoning officer notifies us in the office something needs to have a letter sent to it. So we look up the information and we have the standard letters, so we send out the letters. But I think one thing we've never emphasized is that's on the zoning officer's behalf. And that if follow-up action is needed, we've really never seen it as our role to continue that action. We've always felt that it's action that needs to be requested of us to take. If there's a second notice that needs to go out, if there's anything past that, at least our opinion has always been is just like with a police officer. If you have somebody that's violating the law, just like with your enforcement officer, if you have somebody that's violating the rule and you've now warned them and they have not taken care of it, that it would then be in the hands of your enforcement officer to then make a decision. Or am I going to ask the city to take, if it's small enough, if it's small enough of an abatement issue, for instance, like in the police side, it would be snow removal. If somebody's not doing their snow removal, they've been warned. The police department will then notify the city to take action on removing the snow. So I would say in contrast, in zoning, if you've got somebody who's not cleaning up their property, junk's not a good example because that's not zoning controlled. Let's say it's, I don't know, let's say it's broken windows, and that's probably not a good example either. Say they have a front porch that's falling in, that's collapsed, and they haven't done anything with it. It's not a structural issue, it's just a collapsed front porch. If that's something that after the warnings no action has been taken, he could then request the city, which then we would ask Tom, to then go up there and abate the issue and then keep his time and money. And then what we would end up doing is turning it over to Colin for then doing the lien process. But the important step in there is that we have to be asked, we have to be notified that you guys are ready for us to take that step to actually abate the issue. In a larger issue, where we're talking about demolition size type of activity or something that would require court action to include, our impression of the process has always been that if that decision is made, the zoning officer should be contacting the city attorney, just like a police officer would contact the city attorney and activate the charges against the individual. We've never really seen it in the administration's side, is that's our role, to do that enforcement side. And I know there's been a lot of discussion, at least a couple of council meetings ago, about what the zoning officer is paid and what the expectations should be out of that position based upon that salary. But that's quite honestly part of the role that is described in their job description, is the enforcement elements of it and following it through the process of enforcement. So
So this board needs to direct him to push further on.
well, the
Or
way
can he do it on his own without the board?
Well, that's a question for the board, really, honestly. However, let me show a progression. Let me walk through a progression. The first step in any process is notices. And whether that be initially instigated through a verbal notice or if it immediately operates into a written notice system. A great example of that is, like I said, snow removal. A lot of time the officers will go up, knock on the door and say, hey, if somebody who they know is going to do it, usually, hey, can you take care of it? Well, let's say they don't take care of it. Well, then you're going to raise it to the next level. You're going to send them a written notice telling them they've got 48 hours to clean it. Once they haven't taken that step, you've now followed through on all your notice requirements. The next step, and this is where the board probably needs to give your zoning officer some direction, is action. What do you want to be his base of action? If it is a issue that's minor, at least my recommendation is that if the issue is minor, and I use the front porch as that example, then I would say that you would release Stacy to make his own decision on when to notify the city to then take action on it. And then that can easily be done. I think where it gets a little less clear is when we move from abatement into charges. Because that's the fine line you're gonna have to be deciding is at what level. He needs to come to you when he thinks maybe it needs to be charged. Because once it needs to be charged, he probably needs to notify you. My next step on these properties is to take action on them. I plan on charging. I plan on contacting the city attorney and taking action on them. It'd probably be a good idea if I was him, I would want at least the board know who I was getting ready to file charges against. That's not to say that this board can't decide they want to go ahead and leave that in Stacy's hands, just to go ahead and move forward and take that action. But I would think you guys would want to know who's being charged on your behalf. From an enforcement standpoint. Then the follow-up. There is a follow-up element at the end, and that is that either one of those passes, whether it's an abatement by the city or it's charges filed and likely ending in some action on the city's by the city, whether it's tearing down a building or something of that nature. Then you have the issue of liens. Then Stacy has no experience as far as the process of putting liens on properties. I would say that the administration staff would probably be willing to do the liens process. If Stacy ends up doing this for the next decade, I might come in here at some point and go, okay, we've been doing all the liens for planning and zoning for 5 years. It takes away from our time in administration. It's really something he should be doing, and maybe throw it his way. But right now, I think since that's something we take care of with utilities and we're doing it all the time already, that we would just go ahead and move forward with the lien process.
Adam, could you go into more detail about what the lien accomplishes?
Sure. What happens is that, let's say, for instance, the simpler lien. You had the property where the front porch caved in. Well, the city has they have manpower cost for the hours that the employees spend up there. They have equipment cost for the equipment that's spent up there. And then, of course, you have any landfill potential cost associated with dumping that material. All of that would then be collected and then be reported. It would be claimed to the county for the purposes of being assessed against the property. Much like it is with a utility bill that somebody doesn't pay. We'll make a claim to lien against a property for failure to pay in those circumstances. In the case of a property where, say, the court orders a demolition, that the city can seize the property and demolish it, or demolish it without seizing the property. There are both options. Then what would happen is that the city would probably contact our local vendors. You know, the most common one you hear is Wirtsch's. We'd probably contact 2 or 3 of them, see which one offers us the best offer. Ideally, if we're going to do a lot of these, what you would do is contract with one on an annual basis and have a set fee for them to do houses. But anyway, you activate them to come in, you do it, the city pays the bill, and it will show on your budget, but I mean, the city pays the bill. And then what we would then do is lien it. We would do the same thing we did in the first case. We would then notify the courts, this is what it cost us, and we're asking for a judgment lien against the property. What happens is that lien goes against the value of the property. When they go to sell that property, whether it be themselves or in probate or in sales tax, in property or a delinquent sale, at some point whoever takes over that property is going to have to pay all the liens against the property to clear the title. And that's when we get paid back. Is it a great system? No, it's not a great system, because I'll tell you right now that most of the time it takes 15 to 20 years before we ever see a dime back in those processes. They aren't ideal, but if you're going to clean up a property, that's kind of it's the last option, but it has to be an option you're willing to accept at some point.
I want to go back just a little bit.
Sure.
Short of petitioning to transfer the title, how do you bring a house down that you don't have the title for?
Oh, very simple. The court orders that one of the things you can ask for during the court proceeding is possession. That their failure to do so and the cost associated with abating the issue will exceed or come close to exceeding the value of the property itself. So in lieu of the abatement cost, the city would ask that the court turn over the property to the city.
So it is just a petition to transfer the title?
Correct.
Okay.
And so then what ends up happening is you hope to get some of your money back in the initial sale of the property once you've cleared it up. And then, of course, any development, hopefully, that goes on that property through property taxes, you'll slowly start to recover the money that you put into the property.
Does that go through, and pardon my ignorance on this, does a petition to equity like that go through the magistrate?
Yes.
Thank you.
So when the lien gets filed, does that go on that such as a tax lien?
Yes.
So if the lender forecloses, if there's a mortgage, it will not wipe out the tax lien?
Well, yes, it will. Typically, as Frank knows, the other way we lose out in this process is it's not considered a first lien. It's kind of considered a subsequent lien. So there's a ranking order of liens against properties, and the first preserved lien is always the home mortgage. Is usually I can't think of any example where it's not the first.
That's usually
First order. So usually I get about twice a year, we have a lien on a property. I get a notice from the court saying, you have a lien on this property and it's being foreclosed on by the mortgage holder. Well, we can petition the court to ask them to compensate us in one form or fashion for what we're about to lose. But it's a losing proposition.
So it doesn't go on as a tax, doesn't rank as a tax lien? Because tax liens, I mean, the property tax stays there.
Oh, correct, yeah.
Okay.
Well, they don't consider that. Tax liens actually are better than first.
Yes,
But,
they outrank.
But it doesn't get that. These do not get that type of status.
That's what I was, yeah. In my opinion, we would want the zoning officer to keep moving the process forward.
Sure. Well,
I mean, if you get down to filing
Is
charges.
Stacy aware of
I talked
all of
with
these
him
steps that he needs to be?
when he was coming in boasting about his Giants beating my Cardinals this last week. I took a lot of pleasure in notifying him that that this is what I would be presenting to this board. I figured he had that coming, but I think one thing that's happened over the years, and I told this when Curtis come and talked to me about this issue about a month ago. I said I think one of the things that's happened is that probably the training level of the zoning officer from transfer to transfer has gotten less and less. And so there's been a lot lost in the process. You think about it, we have gone through quite a few zoning officers in the last few years, and I think there's been a real loss. Now, each of them used a different skill set in different ways. Terry Duffy was very, very good at negotiating with people to get them to clean up their properties. He was a master at being able to do that. Phil was a lot more focused on trying to negotiate with people too. I think with Stacy, and I don't think he would be upset for me to say this, I think you'll see him be more of an enforcement element more than you'll see him being a negotiator. And so that's probably where this will lie to some degree is before this has always kind of been dealt with a little bit through negotiation. And with the skill set of Stacy, you can probably expect it to be more on the enforcement side. And since that area hasn't really been focused on very heavily, I don't think there's been necessarily quite a bit of training on that area. Because you remember when Stacy was even hired, our focus at the time was, let's focus on permits. Let's get him up to scale on permits. Then we'll worry about enforcement. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure from a training standpoint there was ever a whole lot of training from an enforcement standpoint. I don't believe we've probably had a strong enforcer of zoning codes probably since Chad Kuhn, to be all honest.
Well, anytime they can negotiate and get it resolved without legal action, that's obviously
Right.
better.
And there is another building in
Doesn't
town
always
coming
happen.
down. Actually, it's already down, I think. Is that the apartment complex south of the bank?
Oh.
The brick one?
Yeah,
The stucco one.
Oh,
yeah.
they tore it down?
I don't know, they're going to, it's gonna be a parking lot.
It's ready. It's
Oh, that one, okay, okay. Yeah.
I didn't pay
I
you.
heard that a long time ago.
Okay, it's coming
Right on the
down.
corner.
It's coming down in the next
Fifth
few
and Auburn?
weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, the Aaron's property, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
And there's he hasn't talked to us. I've heard Johann Funk is planning to tear down the building on South 6th Street, but I
Oh,
haven't seen.
Really?
But I haven't seen.
Brick apartment?
That came
Yeah.
secondhand.
It
So.
needs to go by there, it's bad.
Yeah, because there's broken windows and
Yes.
that, and,
I heard
It's bad.
horrible.
yeah.
Yeah.
so what I think you're telling me is that last year, when there were buildings poised to come down and then it stalled out, what happened was, it's because the city was not pursuing that because it was a planning and zoning's job to pursue that?
Well, I guess I think what was probably happening was that we were both sitting here looking at one another going, yeah, okay, it needs to move on to the next step. But no one was really sitting here talking about, okay, well, who's going to make sure it moves on to the next step? Who's taking the next step to make sure it gets done? And I would say that was probably the disconnect going on, is because we're all sitting here going, yeah, this property has had its second notice, it's ready to move. And then nobody is taking the next step, which of course in those cases would be go to Colin and file the charges.
As an observer at the time, it seemed to me that the planning and zoning board was thinking that the city was going to take the next step.
And that's why, after talking with you, that's why I wanted to make it a point to be here tonight to maybe talk a little bit through that, because I think there's been some, there's been some difference of opinion as far as how that process works.
That's what you're pretty much saying, you were saying that you guys were just sitting here staring at each other, nobody was doing anything.
Right.
Because nobody knew what to do, that's what he was just saying.
Is that we're sitting here going, oh, well, okay, so, all right, yeah, something needs
Next
to be
step
done. Yeah, see you guys later. and then the next time there'd be, well, it's not done yet, and we're all sitting there looking at each other, going, why is it not done yet? But nobody wants to ask the obvious question. Well, who's supposed to be doing it?
basically, that whole list that we got at the beginning of this summer have all had written notices, so it's time to take action on a lot of them then, if they
Yeah.
haven't had action taken on them already.
And you still have your, as of July 1st, your $15,000 that you have available to you is sitting there to use. Granted, that remember that is your pool of money for all abatement action by the city. So if you want to exceed $15,000 in expenses on the side of the city, you would have to ask the council to exceed beyond the $15,000. To give you an example, most demolitions of buildings are going to cost you in the neighborhood of $4,000. So figure if you do 3 houses, you're probably looking to spend pretty much all your money up. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 small abatements can be done on top of that. If you want to do nothing but small abatement issues, you could do quite a bit of small abatement issues with that amount of money.
So, and we get that 15,000 every year? Is that
Every
your
year, I
plan
believe
for
we
us?
set it for what, 3 years? I'd have to go back and look. Or was it 5 years?
No, I think it was 3.
It was 3 years, but the first year the deal was the money you got, if there was anything left over from the Winchell building, you got it. And the Winchell building ended up costing us around 14.7, somewhere in that range. So there really wasn't any money left the first year. Your first opportunity with money has come July 1st of this year. So,
Well, this is a place to talk about it. Last month, we were talking about targeting, going after the building that's north of the store. What's the name of the store down here? The Senex?
Oh, that house that sits back in there?
The house that sits behind the Senex, north of the Senex.
Yeah, north into the, yeah.
Well, like there used to be an alley there. And
Yeah.
that has apparently been a abandoned property with no owner contact from Stacy in spite of notice. Does anyone else remember that being the property that he discussed as being the best first target?
I was thinking there was 2. I was thinking there was that one and there was one,
Yep.
another one, oh, I don't know what street it would be on, like, over by Bowery Street maybe? Was
Yeah,
there one
I know the one
over
you're
there?
talking about.
Where's
I've got
Bowery?
pictures of it. Somewhere.
I've lived in this town all my life, you'd think I know where Bowery was.
Let me see if I can.
Give me a landmark.
Off of 9th Street. And, well, on the south end of my house is Bowery.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, but it's only 1 block, and then you skip across the ravine and go
Okay.
across.
Okay.
you are talking down there at Bowery and 3rd, correct?
I am.
Okay. If you go
So
down
go
on
back.
3rd Street here by the Freedom Rock,
Yeah, oh,
and
yeah,
you go to
yeah,
where the
yeah,
road
yeah.
ends,
Yeah, okay.
as soon as you try cutting west,
Yeah.
it's that row of houses
Yeah.
there.
There was
That's
one
Leonard,
towards the end.
Leonard Street.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is Leonard.
3rd and Leonard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If someone with an oversized semi-load tried to get through there,
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's heart would be broke.
yeah, yeah.
Third and Leonard, and then- I don't know about the one north of the Senex. so
Yeah,
I
they've-
guess I haven't looked it up.
I do know a little bit of the story on those properties. I know when Terry Duffy was the zoning officer, they were taken to court under some zoning issues, and I do know they had to do some cleaning up, and they met their court orders.
Well, one of those houses was a Citizens, CIA, Citizens in Action House that they painted.
Yes, but there's 4 houses there. There's one that's bad, then there's the one that was painted, and then there's 2 to the west of
To the west
those.
end. And one of
Yeah.
those 2 to the west is actually open in the back, I'm led to understand.
Okay,
That's the one, right?
yeah. That one is, the one that really is bad is the one there by where the bridge
Right
is
on that
out. Yeah.
road there where the, go down to the bridge out.
Oh.
Yeah.
I remember Terry even had the health officer go through the building once, or one of the houses down there. I don't remember which one.
Are they all inhabited except one of them, or is that one not inhabited?
I was thinking they're all
I was
inhabited.
saying, I think that one
All
even
4
used to
of them are?
be, the one used to be, I don't know if it is anymore.
The one there by the bridge is
It
out.
used to be.
Used to be, but I don't think it is anymore.
So Adam, if Stacy were here and he were saying, let's move forward with, the house that he recommended last month, what would be the next step we need to take?
Is your recommendation to clean it up or to tear it down?
I think we were talking about tearing down.
Okay, then it would be to take it, if it's met its notice requirements, then it's to take it to Colin and start charges.
Now, when you say start charges, you're not talking about civil, you're talking about
They would be, yeah, they'd be municipal infractions.
municipal infractions. Okay.
Right. And,
But this is when he hasn't heard anything back at all on, right?
Right.
right, you probably haven't met your notice requirement yet, unless you've got proof that you, let me not get into that conversation with you.
Okay.
There probably are somewhere,
Because
They didn't know
I
where
think
to
that's
take
the
the notice
property
to.
where he said, wasn't it, or am I wrong? He said he hadn't heard,
I'd have to look at the recording.
Right.
I don't remember either.
It seemed to me that he chose that one because it was a candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just leave it this way. If you've met your notice requirement, then you're ready to proceed to court. All he needs to do is notify Colin, we wish to file charges. Colin's gonna wanna know what he's violated. You know, you're gonna have to reference for him, he's violated 145.3, and probably isn't a bad idea to take Colin a picture, so that he can include that in his pleadings. And probably isn't a bad idea to tell Colin what you want. We either want it torn down, or we want it given to the city for the purposes of tearing down.
So then someone needs to contact Stacy and let him know this stuff.
And I can talk to Stacy. I told him I would talk to him probably tomorrow, since he'd notified
I'd
me.
say he should pick his top three if we think we can do three.
well, maybe we start with one,
Well,
then other people
that's
will,
what we talked about last month, was getting one done, getting our feet underneath
and then
us.
other people will go, oh, they're serious, you're gonna get more serious about this, and maybe we better do it ourselves.
Well, the notice requirements are, there's been two notices.
Yeah, if I remember right, and I'm running on a very loose memory
That's what I'm
here.
saying, right?
Been a long
We could
day.
talk and do action.
I believe it's,
I think we
your
talked
first
about it.
notice is a 30 days. You give a final notice that's an additional 30 days. Once that period is up, then you've met your notice requirement, and you can proceed to either abate or to file charges.
So how long is the notice good for?
That would have to be directed at Colin. I can't answer that question.
Because if Stacy gave notice back in June or whatever it was,
If we wait much longer, it won't be,
Yeah.
we'll start over again.
that's what I'm saying, do you have to start over again with notices?
I can't answer that question.
Well, it's interesting, because I'm following a case in Wall Lake right now where they gave one notice in June, and they filed a petition in equity on October 10th.
Sure.
And they're going for, they're petitioning to transfer the title to themselves.
Well,
City of Wall Lake.
and that is something that the way our enforcement has been the practice. See, what they usually look at is they look at two things in law. One, they look at what your code says, and our code says we have to provide notice. The second thing is, and it says 2 notices.
Sure.
I don't know if I would argue that's probably not a requirement. That was probably set by our council at some time in the past, that they felt it was necessary, particularly if your desire was seizing of the house. Because
As-
remember,
as
our
Wall
co-
Lake goes through this, if they're successful, I would like to see us propose changing the law
Yeah.
to streamline that.
I'd be interested too, because I know that the judiciary system here has been usually erred on the side of protecting property rights. So I'd be curious to know how it comes out too. Yeah, that's definitely something we could change in our own code, is what we require. In fact, we did that just recently on mowing notices and snow removal notices with the city. We changed the ordinances because we were finding that, particularly in grass, what was going on is we have probably 20, 25 properties in town that we know they're not going to mow the grass. So yet we were going through all these steps. So by the time we got back to mow it the next time, it was a jungle. And even when we got done mowing it, it didn't look good. So what we changed in our code is we changed what was our required notices to say that you get 1 notice a year. And that is sufficient to meet our notice requirement to you. and that it's common practice and common law that you should understand you're responsible for maintaining your yard. And we felt that would hold up in court. That if they come in and say, well, they only gave me one notice back in May and they've mowed my lawn 6 times this summer. Well, we can say, Your Honor, it's common practice and law. Everyone knows they're responsible for maintaining the yard, and our city code only requires a notice on an annual basis. So we feel confident we can win in those type of situations.
Is there any difference that you're aware of in the courts between a system where the mayor is in charge of?
Yes.
And a planning zoning officer?
Oh, absolutely.
What's the
We
difference?
are a little weird in this process, and this gets into the organizational structure of the city. Typically, in a standard constitutional-based form of government, and boy, we're getting into a classroom education here, as you have your legislative, your judicial, and your executive branch. In the case of most communities in Iowa, the way it is broke down is the city council is recognized as the legislature. The mayor is looked at as the executive branch. Well, enforcement of is found under the executive branch. That would leave the police department, planning and zoning, the board of adjustment, and all falling under the purview of the mayor's office. However, that is not the way it's set up. That's not the way our organizational structure or our code, our charter was set up. We are set up with the police department falling under the legislative branch, which would be the city council. And the P&Z is found, it is also found under the legislative branch. But that is not common throughout the state of Iowa. It's usually found. That's why the enforcement of code in many communities is not only found under a zoning officer, it's also found under, if you don't have a zoning officer, it's usually enforced by the mayor. The mayor is actually your enforcement officer in many communities. That's probably a whole lot more than you cared to hear, but
Well, that leads to my question. Would we be able to follow Steve's example in Wall Lake and have that work out for us the way that we're organized?
I honestly don't know. I can't answer that question. Other than it's being, all the codes that are being enforced against Curtis are established by the legislative branch, which would be the city council. That would be no different under our code.
Okay.
Because the mayor doesn't make the code, she enforces. She simply would enforce the codes.
Got it.
So.
We want to make any kind of motion that we want Stacy to pursue those 2 properties and do that next step of, God, I totally lost it.
Well, if he's got a property that has enough notice under our code, then I think we should absolutely make the motion to direct him to go to Colin and begin the next step
I
of
second
enforcement.
that was a motion.
Okay, oh, it's a motion, okay.
Yeah, that's a motion.
That was a motion, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
No?
his,
Oh,
I
sorry.
mean, making it clear then, as long as we're making a motion, it would be his, it would be, what am I trying to say? He would make the decision about what property to pursue and report to us then, so that we don't have to wait till next meeting to,
Should we make a motion that Stacy
His
would?
discretion.
his discretion, thank you.
I can come up with one.
And I'll be happy to give him
Not
that.
very
That's what you
often, once
said.
in a while.
I'll be happy to communicate that to
Frank's
you on
got
your
it
behalf
down.
to him tomorrow.
They'll polish it.
That you'd like him to proceed forward on charges if it's time to do so.
You said that, say that again now?
I just said I'd be happy to communicate that to him tomorrow. that
Okay, that's gonna be Stacy's discretion to move forward on.
If
those
he's
2
ready,
properties
you would like him to move forward with charges.
With charges.
And that, is that for the property down on Leonard
How many do
Third?
you want him
His
to
discretion,
do? 2
The
or
property
3
is
or
his
1?
Okay.
Or whatever
Yeah.
he thinks,
whatever he thinks he can get away with easily first.
for that amount of money.
I don't like
or-
that term, get
I
away
know,
with.
I know, I'm sorry. I leave it to his discretion. He knows where he is with all the properties right now. I mean, we could look it up, but we don't need to have another meeting. I think a special meeting just to direct him to go after something that he can do on his own.
Aye. Oh,
Aye.
All in favor of that one? Okay. So we already did all that kind of stuff. Okay, I have something I wanna ask. You know, sometimes those old homes, even though they're all beat to heck and we're talking about tearing them down or whatever, they have maybe some unique qualities inside. And I wonder if, like, some people really look for those types of things, you know, like old woodwork or little whatever, do crafts with whatever. I wonder if there'd be some way we could, have something open like for a week before something would have to be destroyed to see if people would like to, or is that really too far out there?
I don't know, if we had a successful petition for transfer of title, why couldn't we auction off?
There's two different answers I would probably give to you, being representing your insurer. The first one is I
don't want
would
anybody in that house.
I wouldn't want anybody in that
Uh-uh,
house.
I wouldn't either.
However, I will say, the second element of that is there are one or two companies in the state of Iowa, and I've talked with one before, when they tore the house, the fire burned house on Main Street here down. They will come in and they are restorator. They come in and they'll evaluate the house and go, oh, well, I think we could, you know, we'd be interested in taking the windows off your hands and taking this and taking that off their hands. And they can indemnify you. They're a business. They're insured. They can indemnify you from any injuries, and they're also reducing the volume you take to the landfill. So you're receiving money from what they're taking, and you're also reducing your cost because you're not taking it out to the landfill, and it still survives. It gets recycled and used again.
How much cost might be defrayed from a $4,000 knockdown?
I would say in most houses, you're probably talking about a couple of $100. But, I mean, you never know when you're going to hit a home run, and there might be one thing in the house that's worth $5,000, and heck, you not have to.
Do they charge you to come in and do that?
No. When they came in and did the house on 6th Street, that wasn't on behalf of the city. That was a negotiated deal with a business owner. But when they did do that, and by the way, you should take credit for that one because you guys charged and had him fined for the state of that property. I mean, you guys are the reason why that house came down. When he came in, he was doing it on behalf of the owner. And he came in and talked to us, and he said the owner was going to end up saving about $400 for what he ended up taking out of the house. Now, that's $400 that he's paying. That doesn't also talk about the weight, which, you know, the bricks, the red bricks I know that Denise ended up with, you know, that's got to be, what, half a ton? There's all kinds of savings that you can probably have in that process if we really want to get serious about it.
I'm just thinking more the recycling type of part of it, you know, the most.
Yeah.
Not, you know.
I would say as far as allowing just John Q. Public inside of it, our insurance company would probably have a field day.
So that's something we probably want to convey to Stacy too.
He would probably need me to look into that for him.
Okay.
I will have to. I had a council member recently want me to get that information. I gave it all to Nick Frohart after he left the council, and I don't know that I can still find it. I'll look for it and see if I can dig out their names and find them.
I assume there's multiple companies in Iowa.
There's about 2 that I'm aware of, and you know, you're not talking about big dollars.
No.
So I think one's out east and one's in the west. So the more you're likely to build a relationship with them, the more likely they are to come back, because they're not going to come to your community once a year for $300 or $400. And they're looking at multiplying their business when they come up here and do those type of things. I know I had him go through the Winchell building before we tore it down. He didn't. He found one item in it that he thought about it, but it wasn't worth the cost associated with doing all of it just to get the one item.
Okay. Well. Okay. Is that all the discussion? Are we all kind of satisfied with all of that? Okay. Do we want to move on to the new business where we're just, Curtis, you had said something to me the other day about that revolving city fund. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
In front of you are 2 items. One is entitled Administrative Rules for the City of Sac City Revolving Loan Fund. The other one is entitled Resolution Number, and then just brackets, left blank, basically. I'm proposing a tool for us to use. This is a revolving loan fund that will help people who have already been charged with a nuisance issue to be able to get money to bring it down. Now, a revolving loan fund, they would borrow the money, and I'm sorry. They would borrow the money, they would have to show the estimates. There would be a $5,000 cap. What I'm proposing is a $5,000 cap. They'd have to pay for 33% of the project themselves. There'd be payback 1.5%. And what this does is just mimic something that's going on in Lakeview right now. And this is something we'd have to present to the council and get approved. Adam can probably talk about the specifics of it better than I can.
Yeah, I recommended to Curtis when he approached me with this that he first present it to the Planning and Zoning Commission, get a recommendation to present this to the council. My suggestion was this was good timing because we are in the first steps of the budget process for next year. And so if we were going to incorporate this in next year's budget, now would be the time to be presenting it to the council to get permission to do so. So any recommendation that I would suggest this committee make be that this be established in conjunction with the 2015-16 budget.
Now, we'd actually have to go to the council and negotiate terms, because what would happen here ideally is that a trust and agency account would be created for us. That money would carry over from year to year for us to keep in there. And that's how the revolving loan fund would be funded. And we'd have to negotiate that amount and get them to agree to even set it up. In spite of what I think, against what I'm probably gonna guess is a little bit of opposition from the city administrator not liking earmarking stuff.
I don't like TNAs.
What?
TNAs kind of say, oh, you don't have to use your money now. It's always there for you. Don't use your money. It'll always be sitting there for you. And no one else can use it, ever. And I prefer money being given to an organization, even with a revolving loan. I would rather see the money be transferred on an annual basis into the revolving loan. And if it's not used, it be transferred back out. I don't believe in earmarking money and tying it up and then not be, one great example of that, sorry, hijacked your issue. City has $1.4 million of rollover cash reserves sitting in the bank, but only about $100,000 of that is discretionary that you can spend however and whenever you want. That's what, less than 9%, 8%, of our reserve can actually be used in that form or fashion. This would just be another example of putting that money into a place where it's earmarked and can't be used in a
That's one way of
discretionary
looking
program.
at it. The other way of looking at it is that they were already planning on giving us $15,000 a year, and we could carry that over and do bigger projects if needed. And we
So
could
what
still,
you're saying is if nobody takes this 10,000,
well,
you guys
right,
could-
yeah, if nobody takes it, it would just stay in there and it would build up another amount. And since it could be used, right now, the administrative rules I've hijacked from Lakeview and altered for ourselves, it could be used for any nuisance abatement issue, including funding the revolving loan. That's legal, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if nobody was using the money for a revolving loan and it wasn't successful in that respect, we would still have a TNA set up for us to do bigger projects if needed, something like Sunwise. Now, if it all went into, and this is the thing I want to check about, and this is the thing we're going to have to negotiate, if $15,000 a year went into the TNA, and we set a 5-year sunset on it so that you guys could get your money back if we didn't use it. That would be $75,000. Which, you know, that's what we need for something like Sunwise if we can't get the grant.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, it's gonna be up to the council to decide whether they would let us do that or not. But then on top of that, that's one issue. The rest of it is just, these are the rules that they would have to adopt to have us have the program, and they would be attached to the resolution that would set it into motion so that we can do it. Now, I would want someone with, like maybe Colin or somebody to look over the resolution and everything. I assume that would just be automatic.
Yeah. Which, since it's pretty much the same model that's being used, it'd be reviewed by his sister down in Lakeview. I doubt there'd be much of an issue. But
This is pretty much the way theirs is written, Curtis.
I've added the establishment of a TNA to the resolution.
did you eliminate the element that was economic development related? See, their revolving loan's a little bit different down there. It can both be used for economic development or for abatement issues.
It's their
And
facade project money.
Okay.
so it kind of has a dual usage, and of course, you know, the issue there is that if it's being used for one and not the other, one P&Z's going to be putting their money in a pot where somebody else can grab it then.
And that's no fun. I want it to just be for us. And I also want us to be able to keep it and build up over from 1 year to the next so that we can do bigger projects.
Or when we get it back, it's a lot more money.
Or when you get it back, it's a windfall for you that you didn't even know you lost because you already spent it. So I guess what I'm asking is, I'd like you guys to approve these rules as written, so that we can go to the council on the 28th and start negotiating to try and put this in place.
Is that a motion?
I'm not going to make the motion.
Oh.
The nice thing is that really at the council level, what needs to be done from a budgetary standpoint is simply to say, yes, we're going to do this, and then a line item be established in the budget. That's really all that's done from a budgetary standpoint. It's not that much effort. What's the effort is working all of the connective tissue that makes this run and operate, and that both sides agree to all of how it's going to operate.
So what would happen is I'd turn this over to the council, what we approved tonight, and then they would take it and reword it however they would want it, if they even want to move forward, give it back to us. And then if we all agreed on it, then we would move forward at that point. That's how I envision it happening.
So your intent is for this to exist for like a 5-year period, is that what?
Well, my intent is for this to exist forever. The TNA would sunset after 5 years and they get their money back if it turned out that we weren't using the money. If it turned out to be an issue, we wouldn't just have this money in there that they couldn't spend, they would get
But
it
it
back.
doesn't say that in here.
Actually,
Is that in the resolution?
I didn't see that in here anywhere.
I don't see it in there.
no, you're right, it doesn't
I
say
may have
that in here.
overlooked it.
I wanted to,
So
that's why I wanted to give to the council so they could work out the legal wording for that to give it back to us.
So that could be that could go in the resolution probably.
Yep.
Put a sunset on it.
If they want a sunset, they would propose however the sunset would work, and then it'd come back to us for approval.
So the way you have it written is permanent.
The way,
No, city council has the power to change it, right?
yeah, or to
You
make
always do it.
to make a counter proposal.
Not all of us.
But yeah, this would be a resolution that exists on the books forever.
Bruce
And-
let his red pen out.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, yes, this would be permanent. The TNA would not necessarily be permanent if we didn't use it. They would get their money back, so there wouldn't just be this fight.
The resolution will double or triple in size. Kind of like our policy on sidewalks.
So that's what I'm asking for. If you guys like this idea, if you guys like this tool that I'm trying to copy from Lakeview here, let's approve this so we can go to the council.
I'd move you present it to the council as you presented it.
I second
Call for vote.
it. All in favor?
Got food to go make.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, it's been first and seconded that we'll take this to the council and get approval on it.
Thanks. Anyone want to go with?
Thank you.
I'll be there.
I'll be there too.
I want
When is it? When does council meet?
I want someone on my side.
It's a week from
Tuesday.
tonight.
A week from.
What do you mean? How do you know I'm not gonna be on your side?
We're all on the same side.
Negative Nelly.
For
I'll
your
try to
board
go.
forum, the only other thing I was gonna say is if you think Bobby is going to resign, I
She's
just,
indicated that to
more or
me.
less.
I would just ask that she please either provide either an email or something in writing to the city council so that we can formally take action at the next council meeting or whenever, so that you can officially start the process of filling both seats. Now, the danger when you have 2 seats empty and you're a 7-member board is, of course, remember, you still have to have 4 to have quorum, so the more seats you have empty, the harder it gets for you guys to have quorum. Because I think,
Oh,
yeah, she doesn't count.
I'm an open.
sorry. We think you're important.
Okay,
I
thanks.
think you're important.
It always worries me when a board has more than one opening because then it provides the opportunity for.
Yeah. Well, we'll just tell her she can't actually officially resign until we get that other person. So it might be forever.
Well, we owe.
But she's not here, so that doesn't help.
Do you guys need to make a motion tonight to contact those people or not?
I'm not sure.
Or just discuss it tonight and then if you want to,
We've only got it as a discussion item tonight.
Yeah.
Technically, if it's on the agenda, though, you can take action for it.
Well, by taking action, you mean formally approach someone and ask them if they want to be it?
Yeah. I mean, you can vote on anything that's on the agenda. Even if I call it a discussion item on a council agenda, technically, if a council member wants to vote on it, they can. They can choose to vote on it. It just has to be on the agenda. We try not to, but, I mean, discussion items can be voted on.
I'd personally like to hold off for one more month before we vote anybody new on, so that we can see if we
Bobby, she
can
can't
get
turn in
it,
a
grab a
letter
bigger
till
pool.
next month.
Well, we need to find out for sure if Christie's interested or if Brent's gonna live inside the
Sure.
city and,
Those two things.
I mean,
Yeah.
any other names that might come up too.
I think there's enough questions to not move forward on that tonight.
Okay. Well, we didn't really have this on our agenda, but, you know, we talked so much about the Sunwise property. What do you all think about that? Are we going to,
How are you progressing with your,
It's just forms to fill out,
okay,
working on an outline to, for the narrative.
You know, one point to your filling
At
up
some
board
point,
positions.
excuse me. I'm sorry.
You can do what the trees committee does. We eliminated from the code where it says what their term of service is, so they're lifetime appointments.
okay.
So,
Scare them off.
so
Well, we didn't tell them till
basically,
after.
as
that
Curtis
means you
can,
guys are all too.
as Curtis can probably tell you, the rule on the trees board is you either die as a member or find your own
Find your
replacement.
own replacement,
Yeah.
What board is this again?
Trees committee.
Oh,
Or trees committee,
I
whatever.
don't even have one of those.
Trees forever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Forever.
May have happened at the
Includes the
length
board
of the
member.
meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, or the term of the board. I've got one other board forum. The council did something kind of exciting last week. I don't know, Dale covered it in the paper. They are in the middle of creating a tool for us, where they will, let's see if I've got this right. Do you already have the words at the tip of your tongue?
No.
where they're going to create a category of house that is officially recognized as uninhabitable,
Abandoned. Yeah.
abandoned. We don't have that in the code right now, so that's gonna be another tool added to our arsenal to be able to take to court and say, by law, this is an abandoned property. This is something you guys are doing in the future, we just talked about it last year.
I was asked to contact the League of Cities to get some legal advice from them.
Okay. Well, is there any other,
I have something, this isn't listed any place, but there are a number of trees around town that are dead. And I know of two of them, two different properties that have been dead for at least the couple years that we've been here. Do we have anything in writing where they have to take those down?
There is on the books with city code
Okay,
a trees ordinance. And what the ordinance says is that if the tree is creating a environment of immediate danger, and my wording isn't exactly right, but it's roughly immediate danger, that the city can require an individual to take action on their tree. The enforcement for that would be the police department. We have had one request in the time I've been here. That's the only reason why I didn't even know it exists. We had to look it up. And after reviewing the circumstances of that situation with Colin, the decision was made that it did not meet the definition. So I would say that in that case, if you've got some properties, if you provide them to us, I'd be happy to have the police department look at them and see if they would constitute an immediate danger.
Unless it's between the curb and the sidewalk and then that's city property.
Yes.
Then the city will take care of it if it's between the curb and the sidewalk.
If it's dead or diseased. We don't maintain them, but we will deal
Right.
with them if they're dead or diseased.
But she said they were dead, so. Is it between curb and sidewalk, it's in somebody's yard?
Speaking of trees, I noticed it's probably not as big an issue now since the trees are losing their leaves, but there are several places in town where there are tree limbs that are hanging down that obstruct stop signs. So that unless you know the sign is there, if you're a stranger going down the street, you could very easily miss it. I'm thinking of two places over on 13th Street for one.
Brian Mincer usually is the officer that enforces. That is actually a part of the trees ordinance, and that's why I preface Teresa's comment about trees in the right of way. Usually those involve trees in the right of way, and what the code says is the maintenance of those trees are the responsibility of the property owner.
You're talking about the one kitty corner from the Catholic Church
That's one of them.
to the west?
Yeah. And then further north, if you're going north, I think it might be about.
I will.
Yeah, because my daughter about ran that stop sign. I'm like, what are you doing?
Well,
Well, I didn't see it. Like, how
I mean,
many
the
times have
signs
you
are pretty
driven
well
down the
obstructed.
street?
They're pretty well
Yeah.
obstructed until you're
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're coming up to them, you don't see them
Yeah.
until you're right at the sign.
When I see
What's her name lives there, and I can't think of her name now.
when I see the chief of police tomorrow, I'll notify him that there's some concerns that were presented tonight
Just
about
check
the
them out.
about some low trees hanging in the residential areas, and see if he won't have Officer Mincer drive through and make a list of them and send
Is it
notices
Idaho
out.
Police Yard, the
Yeah,
other
it's
one?
Ibis Corner.
Right on her corner there.
Yeah.
there's one also up there by, is it 16th and Early, where Rose Crab
Yeah.
lived?
Mm,
That
yep.
hedge. There's a hedge there that's
Yes.
not sure view.
Yeah,
That's one of them. That's one that.
That's one of them on
That's
this
one of them
sheet.
that he
Oh,
has
okay.
on the list.
I'll mark
16th
that one
and
out then. I don't want to
King.
double dip.
Yeah,
Yeah, Aaron King lives there.
yeah, 16th and early.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to communicate to John tomorrow that there was some concern expressed about those and ask him if he can have Officer Mincer make up a list and send them out notices. Now would be the ideal time because aren't you supposed to cut them in the fall or in the early
It's a
spring?
good time to
So-
approve, I think.
is there any other, discussion or,
Motion to adjourn.
all right. Moving adjourned, well, second, do I have to go vote again on that?
I think it should
If
be.
anybody's gonna vote no.
That's actually a really interesting answer.
Be surprised.